Guys, today I'm here with Kyrin
Hey,
and
hey.
Juan from
Hey,
Mere Mortals.
how are you, mate?
Awesome, man. So good to finally do this. I've been meaning to catch up with you guys over a podcast since probably seeing one of your videos half a year ago now.
Yeah, nice, nice.
So
Yeah, well, it's yeah, I think we got introduced when I listened to you on the Hustle and Flow.
Hmm.
So,
okay.
yeah, that's sort of how I found you, and then yeah, I've been enjoying your Monday rants.
Yeah, Monday rants are a little bit like a therapeutic thing for me, like podcasts are in general. But just having that one consistent thing that I do first thing on a Monday morning
Hmm.
just seems to start me out right for the week.
Yeah, yep.
Like I'm the kind of person that I could probably get talking about where us three are at in terms of life, but like I'm the kind of person that doesn't have set things to do every day or a certain hour of the day, or like Monday to me is like a Tuesday or like a Sunday, or
Hmm.
9 o'clock is like a 12 o'clock. And I don't know, like I think I've just really bad with numbers, really bad with dates. Um, and as I get older, like I'm 46 this year, it's gotten to a point for me where life was short to me once, and I was obsessive compulsive about making more marks in the wall and putting feathers in my hat. Now it's kind of like, fuck, life is really long.
Hmm.
Oh,
Like
that's funny because
there's
most people say the opposite as they get older. It's like, oh, where'd the time go? Where's the life's so short.
Oh man, it's like the last time I was in a post office queue, this old man was just so pissed off that there was a long queue, and he went off in a huff. Like he swore and yelled out and like just complained about how long it was taking. And these two women just said out loud like, what's so where does that old man have to be right now? Like what's so important in his life that is that he couldn't wait?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
that shows like he hasn't practiced patience as well. Like he's had more time than anyone else to practice patience, and he still hasn't got it right.
man, I used to be so much more impatient when I was younger, I think, than now. Like I feel like my life is kind of like a big house where you you sort of clean up and dust one room, and then you have it all nice and clean, but then the next room's dusty.
Hmm.
And it's like it's a never ending cycle of you fix one bit and another bit falls apart.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like life is like, okay, I don't think I'm ever going to get on top of everything. It's like if I'm killing it with one particular thing that I'm interested in right now, then chances are I'll forget to take the rubbish out this week.
Yeah, nah, I know what you mean. Recently, one thing that we've been talking about, one of the mere mortals, but I mean with Kyrin as well, is we're looking forward to doing a marathon this year, both of us. And for me, I'm a big fitness person, more so being in the gym and doing a couple of other things. But in that instance, it's like, okay, if I'm actually going to practice some running and actually get into doing a full marathon, I'm going to have to let other things go by the wayside to be able to to take in the effort to go and prepare that. So I think generally in life, it's almost, if you think about it, in the old school game like a Skyrim or Elder Scrolls style, you got 100 points and you can devote it into different areas of your life. And they can only go into certain areas. So, you might be able to at one point put a lot of it into, education or fitness or something else, but equally something else in your life is going to probably degrade, or you're going to have to take away to be able to, put that energy into that space.
I saw that podcast that you guys did about um, making sacrifices. And
Mm.
I like that analogy of having X amount of points to distribute. But what's nice about those role playing games is you get to respec sometimes, right? Like you
Mm.
get to adjust those point values at some point, right? Which I think is pretty true to life as well. But I found that interesting, like that. Juan, you're like the for sort of um, full time guy at work, and
Yeah. Well, we call each other pretty much.
the,
Karen's like the stay-at-home mum, and I'm the
yeah.
dad bringing in the cash. But no,
I
the
thought that
money,
was
right?
I thought that was super cute, man. But I think it's interesting that you know you guys were talking about how you had to make certain sacrifices in order to do things that, like, well, basically the podcast is something that you guys want to do. It is a passion project, but I suppose when you chip away at a passion project for long enough, it becomes work, right? Like it's very dangerous, isn't it? Like I think you go through life wanting to do a job where it's completely passion related because that's the dream job. But then a lot of the time when, you sort of have to be careful what you wish for, because if your dream job becomes highly successful, it could actually ruin your passions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a pretty common one, isn't it?
It's massive. It's a
and
massive one.
Yeah. That's so hard as well, because, do you want to get stuck in just like a shit job that you're going to hate if you're a like janitor or engineering for me, but man, you don't, yeah, you always run that risk of, if you do that other thing, which you really enjoy, like you said, you start to notice that, I actually do have to spend a lot of time on the computer editing now, which is, it's not that dissimilar from the design work I used to have to do. So yeah,
I mean,
it's a tricky
considering
one.
you guys are fitness freaks as well, like the amount of time you have to sit in a chair to do this stuff, and even waiting for videos to edit and render and waiting for uploads, it's like, it's really weird, but I have this thing where I tend to watch the loading bar. And it's like, just walk away from the fucking thing and just do something else. But it's a weird thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing I was going to add with that, especially with like say a podcast, you started as you're saying a passion project, and then once it starts venturing into that gray area of, okay, well now you've got an audience and maybe you're making an income out of it, and now there's people expecting certain things, then you shift from a mindset where, well, I'm just doing this out of passion and for whatever I want, to there's other people now expecting me to do this on a Monday or this on a Wednesday or provide this sort of value. And then you start having to make those hard decisions of, okay, is it the things that I want to be doing, or am I now doing it to, do it for other individuals who are wanting me to do this? And then that, that can lead you a little bit astray on, you start doing things now for extended period of time that maybe, it's been months now that you've been thinking, I'm not really enjoying doing this anymore. And I mean, me and Kyrin have talked about this in some of our, because we're obviously doing daily content, and with one
you
of
guys
them,
are nuts, man. You guys, your output is so high.
We definitely took the sort of Gary V advice to heart, which is put out as much as possible everywhere. Well, not everywhere. We'd taken it down there.
Yeah, selective into locations, but still, right? We're having the discussion around, okay, well, at the moment there's one of them where we're thinking, okay, we're enjoying this, but we can start to feel within ourselves, oh, okay, look, we're not getting as much benefit personally, for us. Now we're at a stage that, yes, we're growing, but we can make those decisions. Now, if we were, if you're talking the Joe Rogan level, Tim Ferriss, other, quite large podcasts, I think that now that it's a full-time work or a full-time gig, it's almost like you're making that decision, but now, how much do you take of the audience that, that they want to also be seeing this, but you're not finding as much passion in this. So I think there's a good balance that always happens. But I think that happens with anything that you're really passionate about, that you then turn it into some sort of income/work gig.
Look, I think that word balance had to pop up at some point in our conversation. It's such a huge thing. Ever since I was a kid, I've always had my dad say, there's a time to work and there's a time to play. You must balance both. And I never got it, and I still don't get it, because like I said, if life is long or if life is short, then it's hard to look at your life. Do you look at it as a month of your life or a year, or do you look at it as every single year you've been conscious? It's like, does the balance come within a month, a year, or your whole life? It's like, I think if you try to micromanage and balance everything, you're probably playing it too safe, I feel, in life. And like that, the fact that you guys are producing so much content suggests to me that there's some sort of obsessive compulsive nature there. Otherwise it would just be too difficult. Like it's a mental thing. It's like you guys probably, put your heads on the pillow at night and have a lot of ideas up there and a lot of things to, it's not like you're sitting there wishing that you were into something, sitting there wishing that you could get good at something, or wishing they're struggling to come up with new ideas.
Yeah.
Become your lives kind of thing.
Yeah, look, I was just gonna say personally, I want to hear your view on this,
Yeah,
but
there's gonna be
I'm definitely on. If there's a stream and on one bank is chaos and the other one's tranquility, I'm definitely paddling towards the chaos. That's generally
Yeah.
my life in terms of just information and things that are happening. But I don't know, how do you view it?
No, see, when you said that, I was
Mm.
like, nah, that's actually the
Mm.
opposite of me. Like when I go to
Yeah.
sleep, I put my head on the pillow.
Yep.
I'm sort of done. I've zoned out, and I think one thing I'm good at is I've got like an on switch where it's like if I say I'm going to do something and I get
Yeah.
into the routine, the pattern of it, I can just do that ad nauseum, like ad infinitum. I will sit there and I will just edit and edit and edit if I need to, but I'm not coming up with like tons of new ideas and stuff like this. It's more just becoming like, oh, I've got this sort of time constraint of, oh, now I need to work out, so maybe I can't do this idea. But yeah, no, I'm actually the opposite of Juan. We were talking about this recently, where Juan's perfect day is a day which is, not structured or ordered. Whereas for me, it's something that I've done for the past 90 days and I've like really locked in. Like I've got my morning routine done. I know
Right.
exactly what's going to happen. And then like, maybe once every 90 days, something new will happen that's exciting. But no, I just love routine and structure.
I like that you guys have disagreements and stuff on your meanderings, and like it doesn't take too many videos to watch your content and just realize that you guys have different ways of thinking, yet at the same time complement each other so well and seem to be like genuinely like good mates. And like I especially love it when you guys do podcasts outdoors. Like I just think that's so refreshing, just to see it. You're not, you're not in a box. You're not in a, you're just, you don't know what's going to happen in the background either. Like, I kind of like that. Like, it gives me something. I'm listening, I'm watching you guys. I'm checking out the stack of books that you've got like underneath the microphones. And then like something weird happens in the background and I'm checking that out, like the bush turkey and stuff. Right.
Yeah,
And it's just like, that's really cool. I think, when you come across these little things that you do that without knowing it, they actually add to your brand, like I think they're little devices that people end up falling in love with and associating you with these little things that you do.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, one of the things, it's interesting you were mentioning that because we were talking about, we personally enjoy doing it outdoors. Kyrin sort of driving that, and let's go outdoors. Let's be outside, just in terms of being in the sun. But then we were joking around, what would be like the ultimate setup for a podcast, right? If you unlimited money, and we were talking about some sort of combination of, you're almost on like a ute / open backed sort of car where you're all sitting around each other on like at a table and you're set up on a bit of a lift. So as you're like driving around maybe to the top of a mountain, and then the lift will like slowly like lift you up and down. So as you're saying, right, it gets you this other dimension of like, oh man, you're listening to the podcast with all this other stuff happening in the background. So yeah, no, it's good for you to notice, because I think it's something we definitely enjoy doing.
Yeah, look, I just think it's interesting, like with Leslie and Sean from the Hustle and Flow. Like I've known Leslie from the car scene days where all you talk about is cars, like non-stop. When you're that obsessed about something, all you talk about is the one thing. And then we lost touch, and then the next time I saw him, he didn't look anything like the massive beefy guy that he used to be. Like he used to just be one of those guys, when you're 20 and you're at the gym, you're doing your freaking cheat days and showing that shit off on socials, and then you're like, your neck is thicker than my thigh, and it's interesting, like, because I think when you're 20, you've got all the energy in the world. So it's never impressed me. Like when I see young people at the gym, I'm like, fucking do that when you're my age. Like that'll fucking impress me, But like when you're young, you've got all the energy in the world. So it never impressed me. But it's interesting. Like he caught up. We caught up. He came over, and he was this super skinny ponytail, John Lennon glasses, black head to toe, long sleeved. Cancer survivor, and wow, just like the best catch up ever. Like, literally hadn't seen him for so many years, and just to see how, I suppose for a better term, how awake he is right now, and you know, it's interesting. Like I have conversations with him that are like this conversation where you guys have it too, where you're basically open-minded. Like you're not judgmental. You're willing to put an idea out without too much pre-thought because you don't feel like there's a risk in connecting the brain to the mouth. And
Yeah.
and if someone disagrees, or if your partner disagrees with you, then it's like it's okay, you know, and everyone's got a valid opinion, etc. But when I talk to Sean and Leslie, sometimes it's almost like I feel like that the Ouroboros, you know, like this the snake eating its tail, right? I feel like being at a party when I'm 15 years old, stoned off my head, trying to figure out what life is. And then you're constantly going around in circles. Just when you feel like you figured something out, it's
Yeah.
like, fuck, are we
Those two
talking
guys are
shit
good at
again?
that.
Yeah, no, but it like, don't you guys feel like that too? Like, I love it how you guys have so many topics that are, in my opinion, completely relevant and stuff that I like to talk about. But I've met people in my life that like hate it when I start talking shit because they're like, oh, fuck, here you go again, all philosophical and fucking hurdy-gurdy, arty-farty. And, you know, like, just shut up, mate. And just, you know, you're thinking too much kind of thing. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
do you guys feel a little bit like sometimes it's like you're so awake and you're so curious and inquisitive that it expends energy without necessarily giving you anything solid to that adds to your day or your year or the bigger picture.
Yeah. So my sort of thinking on this is, when I was like in my teens, I had like a very, very active mind, but it was all located sort of like that self-judgment inwards. So I was always sort of thinking, like always thinking. I remember wishing I had the ability to stop thinking at some stages, because it was just constant going, and it was pretty much all negative. So it was like, oh, you know, you don't know how to talk to girls, you know, you're weak, you can't do this, you know, people don't like you, all that. I sort of see this now.
Was it self-inflicted or were other people bullying you?
No, that was all self-inflicted. I had a
Okay.
very sort of blessed childhood. Like, yeah, nothing you know, other than just the usual amount, that the standard amount that everyone gets, I guess. So yeah, didn't have anything crazy going on there, but it was I see this as sort of like cathartic now, in the sense that I can just use that same amount of energy, and it's just pushing it out in a different format rather than being stuck in my head, which is quite nice. Quite liberating.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about podcasts. It's kind of like getting it off your chest, better out than in. I don't see, like, I don't know if you guys are the same, but I don't think there's a risk in marking a time with an opinion and then contradicting yourself later on. Like, I think that era of the
Definitely.
80s and 90s where people were like, keep holding you to something that you've said, or keep holding you to a lyric that you wrote or something. And you're like, well, fuck, that was 5 years ago. You know,
As long
like,
as you, yeah, as long as you as an individual are happy to be, you know, to be wrong in the future as well. 'Cause I think that's what
yeah,
holds back a couple of people. I think it's like, definitely you shouldn't be, you know, withheld to the fact that, you know, you might say something today and I might say, you know, this is the best way that I know how to do X, Y, and Z. And in 5 years, it's like, actually, no, I've now evolved and now know all these different things. Actually, I was a little bit wrong. But if you don't have that retrospective sense to be able to look back and realize that you were wrong, and to know that maybe your opinions or a particular time and context, you know, it can change and move on from that, then you can get into a bit of a ground where maybe you won't even want to say something that you're going to be wrong on, or just battle someone and be like, no, this is what I said. I'm holding by it, even though I can see there's new things, information that I'm getting. Nah, I'm going to hold steady with what I've said so far.
Look, I think you're bang on there. Like, I think a lot of like most of the people that I do hang out with are a lot younger than I am. Like, they're probably mid 20s or so, and part of it is like, because I've been there, done that. I feel like I don't try to offer advice, but when I see, especially a lot of girls that I know that I shoot, and they get influenced by their fans on OnlyFans and stuff to do more, you know, like I want to see more video of this or that. And there's some nasty shit, right? There's some really nasty people out there that are just like really demanding, and like they're, you know, they're saying I'm paying for this, and you know, I expect this. And it's almost like what you were going back and saying, like you get to a point where you get out there, you measure your success by either how many, in this case, how many people are paying you, right? So you're on like 5 to 10K a month for showing your body, but then it gets to a point where people want to pay you more to see more. And you potentially, especially when you're younger, it's very easy to give into that because you got to give them what they want, right? But they're not your fans, right? It's only fans, but they're not really your fans. They're just fucking creepers, right? Like they follow so many other people at only like $5 a month. It's nothing, you know? And, you know, I see it too much where people become a slave to expectations.
Yeah, well, I was even going to say, is it a slave to expectations, or is it a slave to the money or to the finances or to something else that then is driving you to follow the expectations? Because I mean, one of the things you were mentioning a little bit earlier, right, was that part when you evolve, right, when you sort of wake up to a lot of things, and it could be, you know, in terms of your body, it can be in terms of a lot of things. But you know, I think everyone goes through that, you know, being a slave to money and then chasing down that money route. So, you know, how many of those individuals doing OnlyFans do they think, oh well, you know, if I'm making 100 grand a year, if I go and do this and display this, I can make 200 grand a year. And they're making the decisions purely on the fact of money, where maybe actually they don't, you know, in terms of, you know, the requirements of living, they could be happy with 60 grand, but they're choosing to go beyond because, you know, they find that the status or the payment or the restaurants that they go to, they need to keep that up to, and you almost have this sort of, you know, it just sort of bowls up in terms of, oh, well, I've got to do this and I've got to show my body more so that I can earn more money so I can go and showcase more people. And then you never really stop and think, oh, actually, like, why am I even doing this for? And I think that's the bit where you wake up and you go, actually, like, dang, you know, I could really, if I still want to show my body, I can do that and then earn the money that I want to go and live the life that I want.
Dude, I think that's bang on. Like, I think sometimes you do have to stop and, you know, take a step back, right? Like, I think like as you get older and wiser, you start to do it more easily, where you just sort of hit the pause button, take a couple of steps back, and then like reassess yourself, you know? And what I find so common in situations where someone is growing at an exponential rate every week, there's thousands more followers and thousands more dollars, is the general consensus is that they're owning it. I hear it a lot, like fucking owning it. I'm like, yeah, but are you really? You know, like, is this thing owning you? And have you thought about what might happen further down the track? And it's fascinating to me. It's like it's you know, you mentioned Gary Vee and some of these people who are very good at figuring out the algorithm and using it, you know, using the tricks in order to get more views or more likes and followers. And you know, I think I don't know if you guys were around in sort of mid 2000s, like 2000, I don't know, like 2010 or so. The floodgates were open then because there was no advertising on YouTube. There was no advertising on Instagram. So it would be quite often that your content would be pushed to the front page.
Yeah.
And they did it. Like, you woke up one morning and it was like, holy shit, we got 3,000 more followers today, you know? And like, we reached 1 million people on Facebook every week. And it was like, holy crap. And then it was just all taken away. So, so, you know, where you guys are at now is like, I really respect it because you guys are pumping out the content and it's not like you're getting hundreds of thousands of views or dollars out of it. You know, it's obviously something that's passion related. You guys obviously are into it. You're not slaves to the money or some big corporate person, you know, saying you have to deliver X amount of content per week. It's a much harder time for you guys to be launching something like this.
Yeah, there's sort of cycles, I think. So, you know, back in those days as well, probably right at the start of YouTube, was probably when you got the most like absolute shit videos of people who just weren't getting any feedback. So they, you know, they maybe have like this absolute super passion for, I don't know, digging a worm out of the ground and then putting it in this racetrack or some shit. And
Yeah.
just no one else cares about like that. Like there's definitely some certain things where I thought, oh, this will be like a really good video or this will be interesting. And it just really isn't to anybody else in the world. So getting that feedback is good as well, because it can sort of guide you a little bit on the right path. Because I mean, I can't think of anything more depressing as well than doing all this and like right at the end, it's just worthless. Like nobody really cares as well. So it's like, oh, okay, well, you gotta find like a bit of a medium between the two as well.
Well, that's what I mean. Like for me, it's therapeutic. So it's like I don't see the difference between me having a chat to you guys for an hour to when I was in a really bad place with depression and paying a therapist to sit down and talk shit for an hour. You know, like I just find like, fuck, you got to talk to people. You've got to put something out there, and then even if it's planting seeds in your own head, so that next day you think about what you said the day before, and you're like, oh fuck, what I said sounded really arrogant or stupid, or but like, you know, just bouncing off people is you know, I don't think in life I've ever come up with a good idea on my own. It took some other soul to be next to me for that shit to come out of my mouth and go, oh fuck, there's an idea there, there's a business there or something. But you know, like I think since the 90s I've been like, I was probably one of the first web designers in the country, and I've been a slave to the computer ever since and the internet. And one of my greatest fears is to look back on my whole life when I'm an old man and go, fuck, I spent like 30 years on Facebook, you know? Like what a fucking waste of time. And, you know, like it's one of those things where now if I only get 5 likes for a video, but I'm still talking about something that is good for me because it's gotten something out, then I know for a fact that I could have put a clickbait title on it. I could have put a cheesy thumbnail on it, and I could have done something stupid in the video, like make cow noises or something, and would have gotten more likes. But that's not going to help me at all later on. I just know it. Like the algorithm, the, you know, paying to win is a really common thing in modern culture. And so like I could use the 10K that's sitting in my bank account to like shove it into this podcast, and it'll take off. It'll start to go where I want it to go organically. But that whole pay to win thing is weird. It's like, it's a strange culture to me.
It is, right. And then what's the definition of win in that case, right? So, you know, if you look at it and say, well, I'm going to invest some money so that I can grow bigger, and you've got a big audience. And so is that winning? Is winning that you have a massive audience and then you're making money, and then you can step away, say, from a full-time gig to doing that as full-time? So you could define it as winning, but then, you know, then you start putting yourself some boundaries and changing and going, okay, well, now to win, I've got to be making $1 million from this podcast. And to do that, I'm going to, you know, double down on this and be even more gimmicky and make even more cow noises and do all these things. And the more you do that, I feel the more you veer away from, you know, what's the reason you're actually doing things, like why it is that you're doing something. It's almost, you could get to the point that it's like, oh, well, yeah, it doesn't even exist anymore. And it's not even, you know, providing any value to you sort of personally at that point.
Well, even with like the name of your podcast, like Mere Mortals, I think it suggests a certain humble nature that, you know, we're only human. It's the softer side, right? And it's like, it would be really difficult for you guys probably to sell out on purpose. You know, like you could employ a whole lot of tricks to get more eyes on you, but you know, you guys are both obviously super intelligent, so you could come up with an idea probably in 10 minutes that could make a shit ton of money, shit ton more money than what you're making with Mere Mortals, and more views. But like, could you live with it? That's the question, you know, like
no, I know what you mean. One of the things we were talking about maybe a little while ago was, you know, oh, should we change one of the podcasts, or should we be a little bit more current? Like, let's just talk about something current that's happening. Like, say, what happened at the Capitol in the US, talk about the latest movie, talk about Trump, talk about all these things. Yep. So yes, if you start doing a little bit more current, you're going to probably bring a little bit more of that focus, and people, drive that through paid advertising and other ways. You could do that. But yeah, I don't know. It's something that, we've talked about before, but it's never crossed our minds as being like, well, sure. But really for us, the value is our conversations that we have with each other, the ability, if you stripped away the podcast, and here's the interesting one, if you stripped away the podcast of Mere Mortals, we're by the by still going to be doing everything that we do. Like we're still going to having pretty, just shooting the shit type of chatting probably every week or so, whether it's when we used to do it by WhatsApp, we just used to send audio messages to each other, like half-hour audio messages. So we were doing that before the podcast, right?
Yeah, that's mad.
When it comes to learnings and goals, we were doing that for years beforehand as well. And it was just purely, I guess, a theme podcast where it's a particular topic. That, okay, well, that's a specific thing that we're talking about. But everything else, book reviews, conversations on networking in general, that's things that we were doing already. So I guess it highlights to us as like, well, whether we pulled the face of Mere Mortals off or on, we're still doing the same things that we'd be doing anyways. It's just an ability to, give other people, other audiences to sort of peek into our world and what we do. And hopefully, obviously, for them to get that value.
Oh, look, I think there's heaps of value to be had in long format podcasts, because it's like Sean from Hustle and Flow put it best, but there's probably always going to be some gold in there for people. If you go digging, like if you listen to a 2 or 3 hour long podcast, it might only be one thing that you find amazing, but you end up like just absorbing it and sharing that what you've learned in a podcast with your real life friends, So I do find like that sort of open-ended conversation to be not only therapeutic and rewarding for myself, but I've had that feedback is the best. Like to me, the feedback's always gold. Like as a photographer who shoots women, I know that I could post up bum shots and boob shots and get way more followers if I just every single day just posted a butt shot. But the people that comment on those photos are absolute wankers. Whereas the people who, like I post a more artistic shot that I've spent so much time framing and getting it right, and it gets way less likes, but that one creative person, a graphic designer or something like that just comments and goes, nice framing, I'm like, oh my God.
Like, yes, you get me.
God for that. Yeah. And it's like, man, like, I've gone through so many stages of like making money. I've had, I've got my own house and I've done all of that, but I'm living like a hippie these days. And I don't have, like I always used to look at hobbies. People's hobbies are what people spend money on. That's what I'm like, what's your hobby? They're like, oh, I don't know. I'm not really into anything. I'm like, well, what do you spend your money on? Because that's your hobby, And like, fuck, cars and doing up cars and taking them to the racetrack and breaking them and all that kind of shit. It's just, my God, you sink money into that shit, like, like even as a photographer, my camera's from 2014. I'm still using the same lens. I'll use it until it breaks, and then I'll buy a new one when it breaks. And I don't want to be that gearhead that is like using retail therapy to, things are becoming more real to me now. So, it's what I choose to invest in. It tends to be stuff that primarily is just keeping me sane and keeping me off the drugs. Like I know you guys are super fit. You probably don't do drugs and all that shit. Like it's always super impressive. But man, like my whole life has been like just destroying my brain and destroying my body. So like I'm cleaner now than I ever have been. And it's weird. Like I think it's weird to be in this state, and just like talking shit with you guys is just like, fuck, that's actually what I find fun these days.
Yeah. I just had a thought regarding, you're mentioning like, where do you spend your money? And then also sort of where do you spend your time as well? So like if you spend all your time chasing the trends, I'll give some examples because I always like giving like concrete things. So I've got a whole list of book reviews that from 2013. So if I wanted to, like if I really wanted to, I could just sit down and record for like, I don't know, 3 weeks or 4 weeks and put out like, I don't know, an extra 200 book reviews. But but those are like all.
You're a freak, by the way. With
I read tons, man. I smash
dude,
them,
I saw that 1984 George Orwell, was it? George
Yeah,
Orwell?
yep.
Yeah, I saw that video you did, and you were like, you read it every year.
Yeah. That's the one. Yeah, I love that book, man.
You're
every time something new. But so like I could do that. I could get all these ones, but you know, that's sort of my thoughts from 5 years ago. So it's probably going to be a little bit bullshit. Like it's not going to be reflective of right now. There was also one of our first videos, which is like, you know, really shit, sort of grainy quality. And it was our best video for a while. And Juan suggested like doing an update for it. But I was like, I don't want to though. Like I don't want to make a video just because I think it would do really well for that thing.
But you could do it later. Like, I mean, that's the thing. You've got all this content, right? Like it's your content, and you could do something like that later. But I mean, that's the thing. There's no rush sometimes, you know?
Yeah, and that's fine. So it's like, but it's like if you're chasing the trends, right? All you're doing there is what's your point of chasing the trend is to get more money, and then you're going to spend that money on chasing more trends. Like that's why I find probably the people who get to like the really top of whatever it is. Let's just take PewDiePie for example. He wasn't making videos because gaming videos because that's what was trending at the time. He was just making them, and then that's what people got interested in. Then he blew up to, you know, the biggest YouTube personality, whatnot.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing I was wanting to say as well, you touched on it a little bit, and I know we talked about it at the start, right? Time. I reckon people get the ability of time so wrong. So, you know, you totally overestimate what you can do in like a year or 6 months, but you underestimate what can happen in 5 years, right? So I think a lot of people think about it like, well, I've got to be doing absolutely everything now. If I'm not running 3 companies, doing a job, making all this money, driving a Ferrari and a Lambo right now, that I've got them failed, right? And the reality is, look, for us, you know, we're doing a podcast that's now over the year. It's coming up to like a year and a half, right, of doing it. And it's like, you know, we're happy for it to, you know, grow in its natural state, for us to do it. And we're like, you know, yeah, we could see it growing. We're talking like 2-3 years. Yeah, okay, yeah, we could do this. And so we're not in, you know, there's no rush there in pushing the podcast to get to a certain level. And I think when you add that level of, oh, well, now I've got to bound it, right? I've got to be making 100,000 followers by July. And, you know, you're starting to put in these extra constraints that without them, you know, you naturally grow through with the things that you want to do. But the constraints, whether it's, you know, time, or it could be audience, or it could be people who you're advertising with. So, you know, all those things can then constrain you and go, you know, completely different areas that you didn't want to. So, yeah, the ability to think of time as, you know, not bounded in the way we usually think about it is pretty powerful.
Well, it's just dangerous. Like, I think the word business comes to mind, and you know, I'm the kind of person that's always thought money's evil, and it's so hard for me to unthink that. And I think business is a nasty word too. I much prefer to be anti-business and business. And like I've set up so many communities in my life that were highly successful, and then at some point I just got over it. I just got bored of that hobby or whatever, and I wanted to move on and do something else. But because it was making me money and it was so successful, and there were communities are things, they're alive, you know, like there's people on there at all hours of the day and night and contributing to your forums and stuff. And, you know, it got to a point where some people were like, with the cycling forum, they were like, fuck, the guy doesn't even ride bicycles anymore. What the fuck are we doing here? You know, and the same thing with the VW Golf forums, like, fuck, he doesn't even own a Golf anymore. He's got like a fucking Nissan Skyline. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Why are we buying his stickers and, you know, contributing to the forums? I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. Like, if I'm not into it, I'd rather just like hit the eject button, sell what it is, or close it down and move on.
Yeah.
But just because it's successful, like even with I helped to develop a phone game, and the microtransactions were going off, and you know, that was a measure of success, right? If you're making like, you know, 15 grand a week on little sales of this phone app, you're like, fuck yeah, we hit the jackpot, guys, you know. And then when we looked at the stats a little bit further, it turns out it was one 13-year-old kid that was spending like 10 grand a week
Wow.
his mother's credit card or something, right? And he was buying all these things that we were selling. And I as successful there, everyone was cheering. I'm like, guys, I'm out. I tap out. I'm out of here. Like, I can't live with that. So, you know, I suppose I've had some extreme situations where I'm like, well, I got to avoid those situations, and I know what I can do to get more likes and followers and money, but I know where it takes me.
Damn, man, that's a great example. Holy shit.
It's just scary, just what happens. But
Mm,
Kyrin, like the segue into books, man, like I did want to talk to you about that, because like that book, 1984, and also Brave New World, were two books that I read in high school, and pretty much the only books I've ever read in my life. Like I don't read at all, so what
yeah.
you do is like mind blowing to me, and how you can just absorb all of that. Because if I can sit down and watch a 2 or 3 hour podcast, I can get so much out of it. But I reckon if I read books, I'd get even more out of things. And that book review that you did made me reflect on, holy fuck, like the two best books I've ever read in my life were 1984 and Brave New World. And then it got me thinking, as a 16, 17-year-old, what the fuck was I reading this shit for? Like, it gave me faith in the education system, because someone had their head screwed on right in the curriculum and got these books past the schools somehow.
Mm,
And these books are everything that you need to arm yourself for the corporate life, and sort of seeing things from an outside perspective and realizing that you're part of this system that fucking sucks, and you want to, like, it's like the Matrix all over again, right? And it's like these books are like, I look at them now as like seeds that were planted in all
yeah,
of
yeah.
us.
Man, that's
But
that's so cool, because my experience was the exact opposite. Reading
I
books
love
in high school
that.
beat the shit out of me, man. I hated looking for Alabrandy. I hated reading Shakespeare. And there's
Right,
a
right, yeah,
noticeable
yeah, yeah,
gap of like 5 years with a little overlap into university where I didn't read at all, because I was like, oh
right.
man, I guess I hate reading now, because goddamn, like this shit was so boring.
Yeah, because
But
you
it was
probably
just because I
hated
was
school too, right? Like,
uh, I wouldn't say I hated school. I was good at school. Like I know how
okay.
to work the system. Like if you
Mhm,
say you win by doing these tests or whatever, I can do
mm.
that. Like I'll play that game all day, especially if I'm forced to. But yeah, that's just a real particular one where it was like, no, fuck books in high school. No, fuck that. But it's awesome that you had the opposite experience of getting the good ones, and they made an impact on you.
Well, they didn't make an impact on me until much later. But
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's what planting seeds is all about, right? Like you you can't comprehend it when you're reading it, but then later on in life you fucking like, oh fuck, there's that
Well,
deja vu thing.
it's the difference between information and wisdom. Yeah. So like you'll read the
Yeah.
book and you can take all the information you want in the seed, but it's until you apply it in some way and just some shit happens to you, some action takes place, and you go, okay, this makes sense. I see now. I understand. By seeing society, culture in general, things that you've experienced, and then you go, okay, that's where that information applies. Then you become a bit wiser, and then it sinks in. Like, oh yeah, man, this is a
Yeah.
fantastic book, or it was a fantastic book. But maybe at the time you thought, how does this apply? But only until
Yeah.
very late, later do you go, oh, okay, this is how it does.
I'm
Yeah.
absolutely not taking
Yeah.
it back. Looking for Alabrandy is shit.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is shit.
I'm putting it
I
out there, and
remember
there's
having
no
to read that
wisdom in
too.
it. I'm dying on that hill.
But dude, I remember I remember like in year 7 in science or whatever, you first learn like the definition of a cell, and then you memorize that shit, right? Like a cell is a single blah 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 multi single layer organism, blah 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 blah, whatever. And then in year 12 during the HSC, which was like one of the most stressful uh, points in my life, to be honest, in biology, the first question was define a cell. I'm like, fuck, I get it. That is the system. The
Yeah.
system is to drill the fuck out of you, whether you understand it or not. Just regurgitate this shit, because, I suppose we weren't ready to think yet or something. It was all, the playground was just all attitude. Whereas like you're saying, Juan, like over time, you become more, genuinely actually good at shit. And then you start to, that attitude and ego gets replaced with genuine confidence, right?
Yeah,
So
no, definitely. But I mean, like one big thing that maybe I've picked up, quite recently, right? It's the whole what I personally think between, the ego and the self and the thought behind it, and, how the ego might front up in the things that you want, but, the self might be a bit different. But if I imagine myself going back to, high school, 17 years old, 16 years old, and I told myself exactly that information, like, hey, this is exactly what you need to know about the ego and the self, and, don't let the ego drive you, etc. Even then, I don't think I would have done too many things differently, because I would have almost taken it like, oh yeah, cool. Yep, I know that makes sense. But you would have almost gone through the same processes, the same ideas, until, events happened or actions, took place, and you went, okay, I get it now. I understand it. I see where it's either gone wrong or it's gone right. And I've been able to be rewarded or punished and then learn from something on the way.
It's experience. It's like that whole Jimi Hendrix experience thing. Like are you experienced? And it's so important. You can't be told something, right? Like to a degree, you do have to burn yourself so that you develop a callus, or you need to, I think life is good like that. Like you can't just be you can't just assume something to be not right for you, or I mean, that's coming from someone who's taken every drug under the sun and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, like, I don't have any regrets about any of that, because there's just so many things in my life now that like electronic music, for example. Like, I'm so much more of an old school. I'm a guitarist and I love my rock and roll and metal. But that whole sort of mid 90s, when everyone was taking ecstasy, like 99.9% of the people at the raves were on ecstasy, and it was such quality shit because it was coming in from overseas. It wasn't made with like Mortine or fucking it wasn't cut with sugar or anything stupid like that. And it was like, it was just so peaceful and open. There were no fights, even on the news, on the TV, people were like, oh, I love my kids going to these raves, because if they go to the pub, they get into fist em ups and fights. But if they go to these raves, everyone's
totally fun.
loving each other and hugging each other. I'm like, yeah, that's because they're fucked off their faces, man, But like, now when I listen to electronic music, it's a feeling. It's like it's not about the structure of the song, the chorus, verse, chorus, bridge. It's not about the lyrics. It's just about how it makes you feel. And it reminds me of like those times when I took drugs, and that music could move you. Like, I don't know, I can just imagine like that's how it would have been like in an African tribe, drinking some fucking chop up some tree and get high and speak to the gods, Like, I just think
exactly,
it's this connection that experience gives you, that is not something that you've read or something that you've been told. It's it's mental, but it feels very physical.
Yeah, like it's almost that primordial feel. Like it transcends the fact of language. We use language as a way to obviously communicate and share things between each other. But the example you're given there, I guess, with music, the example I got in my mind is there's a guitarist from Dream Theater, Jordan Petrucci. There's a particular song he did called "In the Moment," and it's all lyrical, right? Complete lyrical. And listening to that, I just get all these feelings that I can almost barely even explain when I'm listening to it, right?
Yeah.
Where it almost puts me in like this straightaway state of flow. I'm focused on what I'm doing. And it's hard to explain, but I'm even harder to be something that you could really talk to someone or like share by language. Like someone couldn't really tell me about that song to explain it. I'd have to really listen to it to go, oh, yes, whatever this feeling is, I get this feeling. So, it supports the whole, music, and there could be other things that just either can put you in a state or it can influence you in such a, primary way that's not the obvious sort of ways that we get inputs in the world.
Totally, man. It's like even right down to dancing. Like I love dancing in clubs, and I don't do it enough. But like, you can imagine once upon a time, someone just had like some animal skin, put it over a drum, and just started hitting it, and then people's bodies just started moving. And it's this whole tribal thing. Like we talk about tribes these days, and like people are trying to find their tribe in life.
Yeah,
and I find it really fascinating. That kind of thing where you're looking for like-minded people constantly. And as you get wiser and more mature, there's so much noise out there, right? There's so many trolls out there, and the people who do get 1,000 comments on their YouTube videos all of it's trolling. Like it's all rubbish, the comments. So yeah, you got to choose, pick your path and pick what you value, I suppose, in terms of success and stuff, you know, like how do you measure your successes these days is probably a bit different to how many likes you've got, which is it's probably how people do measure success these days. But
yeah, all assets or other things, right? You know, you're talking about cars, and there's something we were talking about recently as well, right? So I've always been a car guy. I've never had any money to be a car guy. That's the thing. It's like, be a car guy, you're either going to dump a whole lot of money into cars, or you're going to go for like a really awesome stock car, and you're going to like live with it, right? And I've had, whatever, just general type of cars. And then I decided to pull the trigger just recently. Like, all right, I'm going to buy the brand new Golf R, 7 final edition, to be awesome, et cetera, et cetera. And it was great. It was great for a period of time. And now it's been, I've owned it for whatever it is, a couple of months now, 4 or 5 months. And to get to the point, they're like, okay, well, it's just a car. It's just an asset. It's just a thing. And sure, the luster of it kind of goes away. And you can get into some real danger into thinking, okay, well, the solution to this is I'm going to have to get another car that's even more amazing, or another asset, or go and buy whatever, when, I don't know, the true long-lasting joy and happiness and, whatever you want to call it, might sit elsewhere with other things that are more either intrinsic, or it's just following the things that you love. And then if you're lucky enough that you can, acquire those things that you want, sure, do it, but don't let them be the driving thing for joy or happiness that you derive, from your life. Let that be come from other sources that are intrinsic.
That's pretty much black and white to me. I mean, do you guys sometimes think about how children would change your life? Like, I don't have any kids, but I have a lot of friends that do have kids, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about, because I rarely get to talk to them when the kid's not there. Because if the kid's there, forget it. We can't have a conversation like this. It's just the kid's always constantly interrupting, and next thing you know, you've lost sight of your kid and they've vanished somewhere. So it's like, it's really difficult to catch up with these people. But when I do get to get them on a podcast or get them aside on a night out, I find myself drilling them, because I want to know more about, is having children a part of life that, because I haven't experienced it, is it this massive, monumental human thing that humans are sort of on the planet for? And by not reproducing and not having a little me out there on the planet, like, am I missing out on something? And I truly want to know whether your brain changes. Like if you wake up first thing in the morning, does the kid just pop into your head? You don't want to be like in train spotting, where the junkies are all shooting up, and then they forget there's a baby in the house, and the baby starves and dies. It's like, well, I can imagine that if you're on drugs that would happen. But like, does this thing change you chemically, mentally? And that fascinates me, because there's so many levels in life that I don't believe I could have gotten to unless I did get older. Like, I don't believe in the 20-year-old who's an old soul. I don't believe in that. I believe that over the years, the more you're on the planet, the more your brain changes, potentially. I mean, it's the way it sort of should be. And experiences are so important in life. I know that. So like, do you guys ever think about being the mere mortals? Do you ever think like what children could do to a human being, an ordinary human being? Because it feels like it's something going back to high school again, year 7, and biology and how we reproduce and all of this, and David Attenborough and fucking nature and the planet. And it's like, it seems like it's in the animals, it's everywhere, insects, fucking. But, a lot of us aren't doing it now. A lot of people are choosing to be single, or choosing never to leave the house anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
it's fascinating.
It definitely would be. Like, just imagine having it's almost like just a huge science experiment with also, the responsibility as well. Like,
right.
No one talks about the crushing responsibility it is of having a kid as well. Cause that is just, I'm guessing.
Well, this is the thing. We're all guessing, but
yeah, I think it would be fascinating just being able to see like, oh, you know what? These are actually the things you can change in life. Because I think that's what I've like gained from my dad and mum talking with them is like, they'll say, yeah, you know what, this, you can change these little things. Like I can sort of trick my kid into maybe liking this sport, or I can slightly direct them down this path. But there's also other things where it's like, oh yeah, that part of their personality, that is in me as well. And that's something that's not changing, you know, that cheekiness, that always fighting against the system, or that, you know, sort of shyness or docility, whatever it is, you'd be able to, I think it'd be a good reflection of yourself, and to go like, oh yeah, I see that part of me as well. And that's not changing in them.
Yeah, and even how you deal with like your issues with patience and ownership and reflection and how you were brought up, and just maybe being in a position in life where you truly did think that you were at the top of the mountain, but then all of a sudden you realize I'm not fucking good at this. Because I'm not experienced at it, and I have to learn on the fly, and you know, you're being judged, and whether you're a good parent or not, and like then maybe you might look at your parents differently as well. It could be could change the way you look at your family forever after having a kid. I don't know, but I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things as well you would take away, right, is kind of similar how when you read Holocaust books, right? I know it's a weird comparison, but it's perspective, right?
It's the perspective. End of the world.
So when you read some of those books, you get sort of like this temporary perspective shift in your mindset of, you go, oh man, yeah, okay, it sucks. You know, it's raining, or I've got to go and do this, X, Y, Z. But you know, ultimately, I'm not starving, or I'm not being forced to go on a death march or things like that. I think having a kid as well changes your perspective, because all of a sudden, what you thought was priority, right? So maybe priority for you was, I've got to make sure that I submit this document by 5 p.m., or I've got to make sure that I'm fronting up and I've got the right car, or I'm looking clean, or whatever else. All of a sudden, that perspective changes, because whether you like it or not, your kid's just shed on the wall, and you're going to have to clean that up. And he doesn't care about your schedule. He doesn't care about anything else. So it gives you that perspective and humbleness to go, you know, no matter who you are, this kid doesn't even care. You know, you kind of like having a puppy as well. If you've had a puppy, it's, you know, you're going to be looking after this particular entity, a dog, or if it's a human, and you get, you know, that extra view of, you know, this is a human, you know, I'm raising a human who also is, you know, at this true humble state that he doesn't care who I am, whether I'm a CEO or a janitor. I could be whoever you want. It doesn't matter. You're still having to do the same thing in terms of raising a kid and looking after them and teaching them and cleaning them up, etc.
I think about all sorts of shit, man. Like I think like if you've had a kid, I think anyone who's had a kid is a real man. Like any guy who's had a kid, I always look at them in my head as they're real men now, because I feel like it's almost like human 2.0, because it's like, fuck, you've done it. You know, you can't take it back. It's commitment. It's responsibility. It'll never leave you. You'll never forget.
Well, I mean, that's if you're doing it right as well. There's, you know,
true. There's always
people.
Oh, there's bad dads out there, 100%, right? But I always look at it as like, I don't know. I suppose I appreciate people that do things that I haven't done before, generally speaking, you know. But there's just something about it, man. It's just like, you know, I suppose that saying the grass is greener on the other side comes into play, where you can't have it always. You know, like I don't feel like it's ever been a priority for me, and I don't particularly like children and all that stuff. But I know I'm someone's kid, you know, and I know that I haven't done too badly in life, and I feel like I've contributed somewhat, and still trying to. So it's just beyond me, like all of that kind of thinking. As much as I like to think about all these other things that we talk about quite often, that is just one thing that maybe isn't so much a thinking thing, but more of a doing thing.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking back to the past. Like, you know, you're a peasant on the land, you're tilling your field and whatnot. And if you don't have a kid, you're gonna die basically when you reach 50, because you need someone to look after you when you get to that stage. So I wonder how many people throughout history have had kids when they probably shouldn't have. You know, they from the get-go they were going to be bad parents, because they're like, whatever, I hate kids, or whatever reason it is. And
Yep.
it's sort of nice that we're getting to a stage where it's more of an option now as well. If you don't want to, like, fuck, you shouldn't be forced to do it.
No, no, it's not expected. I think, but at the same time, you know, I think we've probably seen like religion, people just that the whole numbers are declining, and you know, less people are getting married and less people are having kids. It's a worldwide thing. So I know a whole lot of guys that just don't date. They don't participate in dating apps, or one of them has never had a girlfriend before. Um, some of them are only just getting out of single beds and moving to queen size beds, and they're, you know, your age, like 28, sort of like, or in 30s. And I'm like, yeah, it's just interesting. It's different for me because I think I was still in that era where dating was just so organic.
Yeah.
Like you'd have a whole group of girls that your whole group of guys were friends with in high school, and you sort of systematically start dating each other, like one girl after another, and you break up, you date somebody else, you break up.
Yeah.
And you know, there was a lot of that, whereas I find these days it's communication should be better, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
really strange.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the opposite side of the spectrum, which is, you know, if that's cool if they want to be that, but there's,
Yeah.
you know, big
If you don't wanna
communities of incels, involuntary celibates, you know, they do
Yeah.
want that, but they can't get it. And so that's, yeah, where those skills have gone, and whether society needs to be, you know, restructured or whatever to facilitate that more organic, like that organic dating you were talking about. You know,
Yeah.
those are valid questions as well.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. But I'll let you guys go because I know, Juan, you've got to probably go back to work. So thanks so much for sparing me an hour on a day of work.
No, mate, definitely appreciate the conversation. It was good fun.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
Same
Let's
here.
do it again sometime. Yeah, but you guys have a good week. I'll leave a link to all of your stuff in the description below this video, and just hang on the line afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
for
thanks
sure.
Easy,
your
man.
time.
Cheers. Thank
All
you.
right.
Cheers, bud.
Cheers, guys. All right, guys, that was awesome.
Thanks, Justin. Hey, I've been meaning to ask you, what have your thoughts been? And there's one of the thing I really like about you, man, which is, like you were saying, you do go down these certain paths, but then just cut your losses when you realize it wasn't working out.
Yeah.
Have you thought more about the your websites and whether you're going to keep them?
Yeah, like that's the thing. I ended up getting the Zen Garage website back up, and part of the reason was that the only one other person that contributes to it is a photographer called Sam Law, and he does these photo posts which have like hundreds of photos in them, and the people that love those um, massive features with all the photos is because they like to see themselves in the photos. Like he'll go to a car meet, there's 300 people there. He goes out of his way to shoot not only the 300 cars that are there, but the people as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when people see this shit on Facebook and they sort of spot their face, they're like, for more photos, go to the website, right? Rather than it living on fucking Facebook, it's living on a website where they can go and download better quality images. Facebook destroys images, right? So even though there's not that many people checking the site out, like there used to be thousands, and now it's like 30 people a day or something. It's nothing. He said to me when I was thinking of shutting it down, he said, "Oh man, that would be a real shame. Like I enjoy." He enjoys spending hours on this fucking shit.
Yeah.
Even though there's only 5 people that are gonna message him to say thanks for the photos. You know, it'd probably ruin his day when people start using the photos and don't credit him the next
Yeah,
day,
exactly.
which happens all the time. But in the end of the day, what he said influenced me to get the website back up there. And this morning I was banned on Facebook for the second time this year. And I'm like,
Oh, really?
yeah. And it's just like, it's not my platform, guys. That's the one thing. Like, I understand that websites are dying. All the forums are dying. I'm not making it, you know, I used to make $1,000 a month easy, right? On the advertising. And now it's like $70 a month now off the 2 forums. It's so dead. And it's costing me so much money to keep it up there. And it's like, well, the thing is, when you get banned off somebody else's platform, you sit there and go, fuck, that's not my platform.
Yeah.
It's like that you sign a thing that says everything that you put up there is theirs and they can use it however they like. So I would say the stubborn part of me believes that it's worthwhile holding on to your own platform. Just because if YouTube dies, if Buzzsprout, if all these other fucking platforms go to shit one day, which like Tumblr happened to Tumblr, I lost my most amazing Tumblr and Tumblr playlist. It's all gone. And shit like that happens. MySpace, all that time I spent HTML coding my fucking page up, it's gone. And you know, like you go and do it on your own server, your own website. When all the other platforms go down, at least you've got your fucking, it's like buying a house. It's your fucking patch of grass.
Yeah.
No one's taking it away from you.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of stubbornness in me that says, if it doesn't hurt you too much to pay 12 months in advance for hosting, and you know those deals, right? You get your domain name, it lasts for 3 years if you buy that deal. And if you can get a plan like that, or piggyback off someone who you know that has a big server, and you know, get sponsored by them, get sponsored by a hosting company. It's something that I used to do a lot with the bigger sites. Find a hosting sponsor, and I think it's worthwhile to, you're uploading your shit to YouTube and shit anyway. You might as well have your own platform in case all this shit hits the fan.
Yeah, something to think about there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Good, man. All right, we'll have to rush off, but no, just thanks for that, man. Really appreciate it. That was good conversation. I like the flow of it. That was really cool because it's just pure conversational. So you just kind of like bounce around to different topics, but you know,
good fun.
Always a good stuff.
Messy styles, you know, messy styles. All right, guys.
And man, I would never have guessed you were in your 40s, man. You definitely look much younger than that. So the drugs couldn't have done too bad of a job.
If only I didn't take all those drugs, I'd probably look like 10 years
now you
younger.
look like you're 20 years old.
Some of the anti-aging as well.
Yeah. All right, man. Cheers. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, man.
See you.
See you, bud.